The Predator's confidence captain Zephyr Blackstone stood tall on the bridge of his massive warship, the Crimson Fang. His dark purple skin gleamed under the ship's crimson lights, and his forearms moved with practiced precision as he studied the tactical display. The Nexari Empire had ruled this sector of space for over 1,000 years, and Zephyr had personally conquered 12 star systems in the name of his emperor. Today's target seemed almost insulting in its simplicity. A lone human cargo ship, the Stellar Dawn, drifted through space like a lost lamb. Intelligence reports indicated it carried nothing more valuable than medical supplies and food rations for some remote human colony. But that wasn't why Zephyr had chosen this particular vessel. "My lord," his tactical officer Korath approached with hesitation in his voice. "Are you certain we should engage? The humans have been unpredictable lately." Zephyr's crimson eyes flashed with amusement. "Unpredictable? They're barely more advanced than the primitive species we crushed on Zerion Prime. This will be a simple demonstration of Nexari superiority." The truth was more complex. Zephyr needed this victory. His recent campaigns had been less successful than expected, and whispers of his declining effectiveness had reached the Imperial Court. A quick, decisive victory over these upstart humans would silence his critics and secure his position. He activated the communication array, his voice booming across the void toward the human ship. "Attention, human vessel. You have entered Nexari space without permission. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift." The unexpected response aboard the Stellar Dawn, Captain Iris Vale studied the massive alien warship on her view screen. Her crew of 12 looked to her for guidance, but she remained perfectly calm. What they didn't know was that before becoming a freight captain, Iris had spent 10 years in the Human Defense Corps, specializing in asymmetric warfare against superior forces. Captain, her second-in-command, Lieutenant Cade Storm, moved closer, to her chair. His concern was evident, but there was something else in his green eyes, complete trust in her abilities. Over the past year of working together, their professional relationship had slowly bloomed into something deeper, though neither had spoken of it openly. "I know that look," Cade whispered, his hand briefly touching her shoulder. "You have a plan." Iris smiled, the expression not reaching her steel-gray eyes. "I always have a plan." She opened a channel to the Nexari ship. "This is Captain Vale of the Stellar Dawn. We're in international space conducting legal commerce. We have no intention of surrendering to pirates." The insult was deliberate. Across the void, she could almost feel the alien captain's rage building. Zephyr's face twisted with fury. "Pirates? You dare call the mighty Nexari Empire pirates? You will learn respect, human filth." "Weapons charging," Korath reported, excitement replacing his earlier hesitation. "Fire at will," Zephyr commanded. "Target their engines first. I want them helpless, not destroyed. Yet." The dance begins. The Crimson Fang unleashed a devastating barrage of plasma cannons. The weapons were designed to cripple ships 3 times the size of the human freighter. But as the deadly energy beams streaked through space, something impossible happened. The Stellar Dawn moved, not the lumbering turn of a cargo ship, but the fluid, precise movement of a dancer avoiding her partner's steps. Every shot missed by mere meters, and the human ship's course adjustment seemed almost casual. "What?" Zephyr leaned forward, his 4 hands gripping his command chair. "How did they—" "Sir." Korath's voice was tight with confusion. "Our targeting computers show direct hits, but the ship is undamaged." Iris smiled as she felt the familiar rush of combat. Her fingers flew over the navigation controls, each movement a product of years of training and natural instinct. The modifications she'd secretly made to the ship's engines and maneuvering thrusters were finally paying off. "Cade, bring us about. Let's show them what humans do when cornered." "With pleasure, Captain." His voice carried a mixture of admiration and attraction that made her heart race even in the midst of danger. The Stellar Dawn spun on its axis and fired its single defensive cannon. The shot was small compared to the Nexari weapons, but it struck with surgical precision, disabling one of the warship's sensor arrays. Zephyr roared in disbelief. Impossible. They're using cargo ship weapons. The hunters doubt as the battle continued. Something shifted in the cosmic balance. The massive Nexari warship, designed to intimidate and destroy, found itself dancing to the rhythm set by a simple, human cargo ship. Every time Zephyr thought he had predicted their movement, the humans surprised him. "My lord," Korath's voice carried a new tone, respect mixed with fear. "They're not fighting like merchants. These tactics, they're military grade." Iris proved his point by executing a maneuver that should have been impossible for a ship of her class, slipping under the warship's firing arc and landing 3 precise shots on the Crimson Fang's weapon systems. Inside the human ship, the crew worked with desperate efficiency. What had started as terror had transformed into fierce determination. They could see their captain's skill, feel Lieutenant Storm's steady presence, and began to believe they might actually survive this encounter. "Engine output at 110%, reported their engineer Tobias Crane, sweat beading on his forehead. "She's pushing harder than she was designed for, but she's holding together." "That's because she knows what's at stake," Iris replied, her hands never pausing in their deadly dance across the controls. Cade moved to stand beside her chair, his presence a steadying force. "The crew believes in you," he said quietly. "I believe in you." Their eyes met for a moment, and in that brief connection, years of unspoken feelings passed between them. The danger, the impossible odds, the trust. It all crystallized into something pure and powerful. The tide turned. Zephyr's confidence began to crumble as his mighty warship sustained damage from what should have been easy prey. His crew's faith in him wavered with each successful human attack. The whispers he'd tried to silence through this easy victory were growing louder in his own mind. "Sir, we've lost primary weapons control," Korath reported, his earlier enthusiasm completely gone. "Hull breaches on decks 7 and 12. They're targeting our weak points with impossible accuracy." "How do they know our vulnerabilities?" Zephyr demanded, but he already suspected the answer. The humans had been studying them, learning from every encounter, every battle report. While the Nexari had dismissed them as primitive, the humans had been gathering intelligence. Iris's voice crackled across the communication channel, calm and professional. "Nexari vessel, you have 2 options. Withdraw from this sector immediately, or continue this engagement and face the consequences." The threat should have been laughable coming from a cargo ship, but Zephyr found himself actually considering retreat. His ship was crippled, his crew demoralized, and the humans showed no signs of slowing down. "My lord," Korath approached cautiously, "perhaps we should reconsider. There will be other opportunities." "Never." Zephyr's pride wouldn't allow retreat, even as his tactical mind screamed that it was the only logical option. Hearts in the yay. Heat of battle. As the engagement intensified, something beautiful happened aboard the Stellar Dawn. Faced with impossible odds, the crew didn't just survive. They thrived. Under Iris's leadership and Cade's steady support, they functioned as a perfect team. "Targeting their command bridge," Iris announced, her voice carrying a new edge. "Captain," Cade said softly, moving closer. "That could kill everyone on their bridge." She paused, her finger hovering over the firing control. In that moment of hesitation, she felt his hand cover hers. Warm, strong, anchoring her to her humanity, even in the heat of battle. "You're right," she whispered, then opened a channel to the Nexari ship. "This is your final warning. Stand down now, or face complete destruction." The intimacy of the moment, the trust between them, spoke of feelings that had been building for months. In the face of death, pretense became impossible. The Predator's fall. Zephyr stared at his tactical display in growing horror. His mighty warship, pride of the Nexari fleet, was being systematically dismantled by a human cargo ship. The impossible had become reality, and his career, possibly his life, hung in the balance. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human ship," Korath reported. "Put it through," Zephyr said, his voice barely above a whisper. Iris's image appeared on the main screen, her steel gray eyes boring into his soul. Behind her, he could see the determined faces of her crew, and particularly the strong human male, who stood protectively at her side. "Captain Blackstone," she said, using his name with casual authority. "You made a critical error today. You assumed that because we're human, we're weak. You confused compassion for cowardice, diplomacy for submission. We don't seek war, but when war finds us, we finish it." The words hit Zephyr like physical blows. Everything he believed about human weakness, about Nexari superiority, crumbled in the face of this devastating reality. "Your ship is crippled, your crew demoralized, and your reputation destroyed," Iris continued. "But I'm giving you something your empire rarely offers: mercy. Withdraw now, and live to learn from this mistake." As Zephyr looked into her eyes, he saw something that terrified him more than any weapon: absolute certainty. This human captain wasn't bluffing, wasn't desperate. She was offering him a choice between survival and annihilation with the casual confidence of someone who held all the cards. For the first time in his career, Captain Zephyr Blackstone ordered a retreat, his mighty warship limping away from a simple human cargo vessel. Behind him, he left not just his pride, but the first crack in the Nexari Empire's belief in their own invincibility. In the quiet aftermath, as the stellar dawn continued its journey, Iris finally allowed herself to feel the weight of what had happened. Cade's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining as they watched the alien ship disappear into the starfield. "That," he said softly, "was the most beautiful and terrifying thing I've ever seen." She turned to face him, seeing her own reflection in his eyes. "It's not over. This was just the beginning." But as their lips met in their first kiss, surrounded by the vast beauty of space and the quiet pride of their crew, both knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The hunter had become the hunted, but more importantly, two hearts had found each other in the darkness between the stars. The diplomatic gambit. 3 months after Captain Zephyr Blackstone's humiliating defeat, the corridors of the Nexari flagship, Obsidian Crown, buzzed with tension. Princess Vela Nightwhisper, Zephyr's daughter and heir to his military command, stood before the massive viewport of her private quarters, watching the stars drift by. Her ethereal beauty was striking even by Nexari standards. Her skin shimmered with an opalescent quality that shifted from deep purple to silver in the light, and her 6 graceful arms moved with fluid precision as she studied diplomatic reports. Unlike her father, Vela possessed something rare among the Nexari nobility: curiosity about other species and doubt about their empire's methods. The reports of her father's defeat had shaken her worldview, but what intrigued her more were the intercepted human communications that spoke of diplomacy rather than revenge. "My lady," her aide Theron approached with careful steps. "The human, diplomatic vessel has arrived at the neutral station. They're requesting formal negotiations." Vela's luminous golden eyes reflected deep thought. "And what does my father say to this request?" "He refuses to acknowledge it exists, my lady. He speaks only of rebuilding our forces for another attack." She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of inevitable change. "Then I suppose I must act without his blessing. Prepare my personal ship. We're going to meet these humans." The unexpected envoy, Captain Jackson Rivers, adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform as he reviewed the files one final time. The humans had chosen him specifically for this mission, not because of his military record, though it was impressive, but because of his unique gift for reading people and situations. His warm brown eyes and easy smile had diffused more conflicts than most weapons ever could. Beside him, Dr. Luna Frost made final preparations for what could be the most important xenobiological study in human history. Her brilliant mind had already begun analyzing the preliminary data on Nexari physiology and psychology, searching for common ground between their species. "Nervous?" Jackson asked, noting the slight tremor in Luna's hands as she organized her research tablets. "Terrified," she admitted with characteristic honesty. Her auburn hair caught the station's artificial light as she looked up at him. "We're about to attempt something that could either save both our species or start a war that destroys everything. Jackson's smile was gentle and reassuring. Then it's a good thing we're not doing this alone. The docking bay's atmosphere processor hummed as the Nexari shuttle approached. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, they could see the sleek alien craft, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. First contact, second chances. When Princess Vela Nightwhisper stepped from her shuttle, the very air seemed to shimmer around her presence. She moved with otherworldly grace, her formal robes flowing like liquid starlight. But it was her eyes that captured Jackson's attention. Ancient wisdom mixed with youthful hope, a combination that spoke of someone caught between two worlds. Princess Nightwhisper. Jackson stepped forward with a respectful bow that acknowledged her rank without showing submission. I am Captain Jackson Rivers, representing the Human Diplomatic Corps. This is Dr. Luna Frost, our chief xenobiologist. Vela studied them both with intense curiosity. These humans looked so different from the fierce warriors her father had described. Where was the savage brutality, the primitive aggression? Instead, she saw intelligence, compassion, and something that made her pulse quicken, genuine interest in understanding rather than conquering. Captain Rivers, she replied, her voice carrying musical tones that seemed to resonate in the station's corridors. Dr. Frost, I confess you are not what I expected. What did you expect? Luna asked with scientific curiosity, her professional demeanor hiding her fascination with the princess's bioluminescent skin patterns. Monsters, Vela answered honestly. That's what we've been told humans are. Savage, unpredictable, dangerous. She paused, her golden eyes meeting Jackson's brown ones. But you don't look like monsters. Jackson's smile was warm and understanding. Funny thing about monsters, they usually look just like everyone else. It's their actions that define them. The dance of diplomacy. The neutral station's conference room had been carefully prepared for the historic meeting. Atmospheric controls maintained perfect conditions for both species, while translation matrices ensured clear communication. But as the formal negotiations began, something unexpected started to bloom. Vela found herself drawn not just to the humans' proposals for peace, but to their passionate advocacy for their own people and genuine concern for reducing casualties on both sides. When Jackson spoke about the families affected by the conflict, his voice carried an emotional weight that resonated with something deep in her alien heart. Your species fights for love, she observed during a break in negotiations. Not conquest, not glory, love. Is that so surprising? Luna interjected, her scientific mind analyzing the princess's biometric readings through subtle sensors. Love is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. It drives us to protect what matters most. Vela's skin patterns shifted to deeper purples and golds, colors that, unknown to the humans, indicated deep emotional stirring among her people. The Nexari fight for honor, for the glory of empire. But love, that's something we've forgotten. Jackson leaned forward, his diplomatic training warring with personal instinct. Maybe that's what both our species need to remember, that honor without love becomes cruelty, and empire without compassion becomes tyranny. Their eyes met across the conference table, and in that moment, something electric passed between them. Recognition, attraction, and the dangerous possibility of something more. Hearts across the void. As the negotiations continued over several days, the formal diplomatic dance gradually transformed into something more intimate. Vela found herself looking forward to their private conversations, when the recording devices were off and they could speak as individuals rather than representatives. Tell me about your world, she asked one evening as they stood together in the station's observation lounge, watching the stars wheel slowly past. Jackson described Earth's blue oceans and green forests, the diversity of human cultures and the dreams that drove their expansion into space. His words painted pictures that made Vela's artistic soul soar with longing. And your world? He asked in return. Vela spoke of the Nexari homeworld's crystal cities and floating gardens, of art forms that used living light and music that could touch the soul directly. As she spoke, her skin patterns danced with colors that told their own story of beauty and loss. "It sounds magnificent," Jackson said softly, and she could tell he meant it. "It was once, before we became conquerors instead of creators." Her voice carried centuries of regret. "My father's generation forgot that we were artists and poets first, warriors second." They stood closer now, the diplomatic distance gradually eroding as personal connection grew stronger. Luna, watching from across the lounge while reviewing her xenobiological data, noted the synchronization of their breathing patterns and the way their bioelectric fields seemed to harmonize. "This is fascinating," she murmured to herself, then louder, "and potentially very dangerous." The opposition rises news of the secret negotiations reached Captain Zephyr Blackstone through his network of loyal officers. His rage was incandescent, his forearms gesturing wildly as he paced the bridge of his rebuilt warship. "My own daughter consorting with the enemy," he roared, "trading state secrets for alien smiles." His tactical officer, Korath, approached cautiously. "Sir, perhaps the princess sees an opportunity we don't. The humans have proven resourceful." Zephyr's crimson eyes blazed with fury. "Resourceful? They're vermin, and now they've poisoned my daughter's mind with their weakness." He began issuing orders with deadly precision. A strike force would be assembled, ostensibly for training exercises, but actually to intercept his daughter's diplomatic mission and end the negotiations permanently. Meanwhile, aboard the human diplomatic vessel, Dr. Luna Frost's analysis had reached a startling conclusion. The bioelectric compatibility between Princess Vela and Captain Rivers wasn't just unusual, it was practically unprecedented. Their neural patterns were beginning to synchronize in ways that suggested a deeper connection than mere attraction. "Jackson," she said urgently as she found him in his quarters, "we need to talk. The readings I'm getting from you and the princess, they're off the charts." He looked up from his diplomatic notes and Luna could see the conflict in his eyes. "I know. I can feel it too. Every time we're in the same room, it's like coming home to a place I've never been." "That's not poetic metaphor," Luna said, seriously. "That's actual neurological synchronization. Your brain patterns are aligning with hers in ways that shouldn't be possible between different species. Love in the time of war. Despite the growing evidence of their connection, both Jackson and Vela struggled with the implications of their feelings. During their final scheduled negotiation session, the tension was palpable. "The terms are acceptable to the human government," Jackson said formally, but his eyes never left Vela's face. "And I believe I can convince the Nexari Council to consider them," she replied, her skin patterns shifting to colors that spoke of hope and longing. Luna watched the interplay between them with growing fascination and concern. The xenobiological data was clear. They were bonding at a genetic level that transcended normal diplomatic relations. "There's something else we need to discuss," Vela said quietly as the formal session ended. "My father is coming. He won't allow these negotiations to continue." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Outside the station, sensors were already detecting the approach of Nexari warships. Jackson stood and moved around the table to where Vela sat. "Then we have a choice to make. Do we run and let fear dictate our future? Or do we stand together and show both our peoples that there's another way?" Their hands touched across the species barrier, his warm and steady, hers cool and electric, with bioluminescent energy. The moment their skin made contact, both felt a surge of connection that went beyond the physical into something transcendent. "Together," Vela whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated with something deep in Jackson's soul. The battle for hearts and minds. Captain Zephyr's fleet dropped out of hyperspace like avenging angels, weapons charged and ready for destruction. His flagship, the Crimson Vengeance, led the formation directly toward the neutral station. "Attention all vessels," his voice boomed across communication channels. "You are harboring traitors to the Nexari Empire. Surrender my daughter immediately, or face annihilation." Aboard the station, alarms blared as the human diplomatic vessel prepared for emergency departure. But Jackson and Vela stood together in the conference room, their decision made. "We're not running," Jackson announced to his crew. "Sir," came the voice of Commander Torres from the bridge, Their weapons are enough to turn this station into cosmic dust. Then we better make sure our words are stronger than their weapons, Vela said, her skin patterns now blazing with colors that spoke of determination and love. She opened a communication channel to her father's ship. Father, this is Princess, Vela Night Whisper. I invoke the right of heart's truth. The ancient Nexari law hadn't been invoked in over 1,000 years. It allowed any member of the royal family to claim personal trial by combat, or trial by truth when matters of the heart conflicted with matters of state. Zephyr's image appeared on the main screen, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. You invoke that archaic law for these creatures? I invoke it for love, Vela replied simply. Something our people once understood. The trial of truth. The right of heart's truth required that both parties present their case before witnesses from both species. Zephyr had no choice but to agree, though his weapons remained trained on the station. In the station's main assembly hall, representatives from both the human and Nexari fleets gathered to witness the unprecedented trial. Jackson stood beside Vela, their connection now obvious to everyone present. Speak your truth, daughter, Zephyr commanded, his voice heavy with disappointment. Vela's skin patterns shifted to pure silver, the color of absolute honesty among her people. For 1,000 years, the Nexari have conquered and destroyed, believing strength came from dominance. But I have learned that true strength comes from connection, from understanding, from love. She turned to Jackson, her golden eyes reflecting the depth of her feelings. This human has shown me that two beings from different worlds can create something beautiful together. Not conquest, not submission, but partnership. Jackson stepped forward, his diplomatic training forgotten in the face of raw emotion. I came here to negotiate peace between our peoples. I found something far more valuable, proof that love really can bridge any gap, overcome any difference. The assembled witnesses watched in amazement as Jackson and Vela's bioelectric fields began to resonate in perfect harmony, creating patterns of light that danced around them like living art. Dr. Luna Frost, monitoring from her position with the human delegation, could barely contain her excitement. The neurological synchronization is complete, she whispered into her recording device. They're demonstrating interspecies bonding at a level previously thought impossible. The heart's victory, Zephyr stared at his daughter and the human captain, watching the light show of their connected biofields with growing wonder and confusion. Everything he had believed about alien species, about the impossibility of true understanding between different races, was crumbling before his eyes. How? He asked quietly, his rage giving way to bewilderment. Love doesn't recognize species barriers, Father, Vela replied gently. It recognizes kindred spirits, compatible souls, the possibility of creating something greater than the sum of its parts. Jackson looked directly at the Nexari captain who had become his inadvertent matchmaker. Your daughter is remarkable, sir. Her wisdom, her compassion, her strength, they've shown me possibilities I never imagined. The human delegation watched in tense silence as Zephyr processed this information. Around the assembly hall, members of both species began to murmur among themselves, seeing in the couple before them a vision of what cooperation, rather than conflict, might achieve. The right of heart's truth has been invoked, announced Elder Siren, one of the ancient Nexari legal scholars who had been summoned to oversee the trial. The evidence is clear. True bonding has occurred between these two beings. By ancient law, this union must be recognized and protected. Zephyr looked around the hall, seeing his own officers watching with expressions of wonder rather than disgust. Even his most loyal followers were being swayed by the undeniable evidence of genuine connection between the two lovers. A new dawn as the trial concluded. Something unprecedented happened. Representatives from both species began approaching, Jackson and Vela, offering congratulations and expressing hope for the future. The couple's courage in standing up for their love had created a catalyst for change that neither side had expected. Dr. Luna Frost approached with her data tablets, her scientific excitement barely contained. The implications of this bonding go far beyond romance, she announced to the assembly. If our species can connect at this level, imagine what we could accomplish working together instead of against each other. Captain Zephyr stood alone for a moment, watching his daughter glow with happiness as she received congratulations from humans and Nexari alike. Finally, he approached the couple, his expression unreadable. "Daughter," he said formally, then paused. "Princess Vela, you have shown courage that I had forgotten we possessed." Vela's skin patterns shifted to warm golds and purples, colors of love and hope. "Father, this doesn't have to mean the end of Nexari's strength. It can mean the beginning of a different kind of power." Jackson extended his hand to the alien captain who had inadvertently brought them together. "Sir, your attack on the Stellar Dawn led to this moment. Maybe there's something to be said for fate." After a long moment, Zephyr clasped the offered hand with one of his forearms. "Perhaps, Captain Rivers. Perhaps there is." Epilogue. Among the Stars. 6 months later, the first joint human Nexari research station orbited a neutral star, its hybrid architecture representing the best of both civilizations. Princess Vela Night Whisper Rivers and Captain Jackson Rivers served as its co-directors, their relationship having evolved into both a personal marriage and a professional partnership that continued to astound both species. Dr. Luna Frost had established the galaxy's premier xenobiological research facility aboard the station, studying the ongoing bonding between the couple and documenting similar connections beginning to form between other humans and Nexari. In the station's observation lounge, Jackson and Vela stood together watching the stars, their hands intertwined, and their bioelectric fields creating a constant light show around them. "Do you ever regret it?" Jackson asked softly. "Giving up your royal position, defying your father's wishes?" Vela's laugh was like music, harmonizing with frequencies that resonated in his bones. "Regret finding the other half of my soul? Never." Their kiss was interrupted by an urgent communication from the bridge. Co-directors were receiving a priority transmission from the Nexari homeworld. The message was from Captain Zephyr, now serving as the Nexari Empire's first ambassador of interspecies relations. "Daughter Captain Rivers, I have news. The Council has approved the establishment of 3 more joint stations and—" his voice carried a note of wonder. "We've received first contact communications from 2 other species requesting similar diplomatic exchanges." As the message ended, Jackson and Vela looked at each other with shared amazement. Their love had not just bridged the gap between 2 species, it had opened doorways to an entire galaxy of possibilities. "Well," Jackson said with a grin, "I suppose attacking that human vessel really was their worst decision." Vela's skin patterns danced with colors of joy and laughter. "And our greatest fortune." Outside their viewport, the stars seemed to shine, a little brighter, as if the universe itself was celebrating the triumph of love over fear, understanding over hatred, and hope over despair. In the vast darkness of space, 2 hearts from different worlds had found each other and lit a beacon that would guide both their species toward a brighter future among the infinite stars. The hunter had indeed become the hunted, but in the end, both the predator and the prey discovered they were searching for the same thing all along: connection, understanding, and love that transcended every boundary the cosmos could devise.